Welcome to Roil Road, where we ask the question, what road are we all on and how do we navigate it? Today, Brian Martinez and I will be discussing Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, including the abrupt change of heart by Twitter's board, and how Musk's entering the fray might influence Mark Zuckerberg in his management of Facebook and Instagram. We also discuss Zuckerberg going all in on his metaverse project and speculate on what fruit that will bring. Finally, we discuss the apparent presidential aspirations of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and the likelihood of him as the 2024 Republican nominee displacing Trump. But first, let me tell you about Roil. Roil is a better way to enjoy content online. Today's internet is under the domination of a handful of tech giants. The power of these platforms lies in their huge network of users who mutually attract each other, those who post and share content, and those who enjoy that content. This triggers a snowballing network effect where everybody wants to be where everybody already is. New competitors struggle to gain traction because they can only offer a fraction of the content and a fraction of the audience of the established giant. Some startups have tried to find market niches based on political orientation, but this is a poor solution. The real problem is that the post and share network model inevitably results in monopolies. Roil presents a new model. Using RSS, a foundational but underutilized internet technology, Roil collects data from across the internet and presents it to you in a thoroughly modern and feature-rich way. Because of RSS, Roil from the start has a vast library of content. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and websites. You simply choose your favorite content creators and personalize Roil so that it shows you the content that you want. The Roil community shares, organizes, and discusses what they follow, using all the features you've come to expect from a modern platform. Roil's ability to start with a vast content library does come with a limitation. We do not show images because we respect all creators' intellectual property rights, and we will not show any creative content without their permission. But we can show you what you need, such as the title, creator name, and when it was released. The full experience is just a click away. Within Roil, creators can claim their feeds and grant us permission to better showcase their content, such as including images. For these creators, Roil serves as an insurance policy against the host where they post their content. If the creator chooses to relocate to a different platform for posting, Roil lets them bring their subscribers with them from the old feed to the new one. You may ask, how do we know that Roil won't ever become a monopoly that abuses its power? The answer to this lies in Roil's new model. For the very reason that Roil is able to start with a rich library of content, a new competitor to Roil would have this same advantage. Our window of opportunity to solve the problem of post and share internet giants is closing. Much of the internet still supports RSS, but that proportion is diminishing, largely because platforms recognize that RSS diminishes their hold over their network of users. Users should insist that platforms support RSS. I created Roil because there were lots of different content sources I wanted to keep up with, but who has the time to manually rotate across lots of different web pages? If we insist that platforms distribute enough information for users to stay aware of posting activity without having to live on their website, then it is possible for people to receive updates about new content from multiple sources all in one place. Roil is a better way to enjoy content online. Power should lie with creators and users, not with the tech platform that connects them. I hope you will be part of the solution. I hope to see you on Roil. Why not give Roil a try? It would mean a lot to us as we are just getting started. You can help us solve the problem of online monopolies. Let's get this show on the road. Brian, hello. So good to see you again.
It's good to see you too, John. How are
It's
things?
been an interesting 2 weeks, man.
Oh, yeah. A little bit.
The tagline for our show is where we talk about what road we're all on and how we navigate it. And this last couple of weeks, I think, has been unusually momentous in terms of trying to figure out what's the shape of the next few years going to be. The two main topics that we're going to talk about in that regard are Elon Musk and Twitter and Ron DeSantis and his presidential aspirations. So let's start with Elon Musk. So last time we had been talking on I think the very day, maybe the day after, that Elon Musk made his $40+ billion offer in principle. At the time, it wasn't a fully fleshed out offer. There wasn't financing or anything like that, but offer in principle to buy Twitter. And then we were treated to a few 10 days or so of, that's never going to happen. The board would never allow it to occur. They passed the poison pill provision that stops him from buying more stock. And it seemed that the risk had been thwarted. And that was up until a couple days ago, Monday of this week, when it was announced in a somewhat startling reversal that, yep, the Twitter board has accepted the proposal and they're moving forward with the sale, and financing is being cobbled together by Musk is putting in 50% equity himself, and then a combination of basically all of the top banks in the world are each taking a slice of the financing. So that's an interesting event, man.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I don't know a lot about, these kinds of purchases, but my understanding was that there wasn't, like, the board had no choice, really. If they hadn't have done it, they were basically caught between a rock and a hard place, it seemed.
So
and go ahead.
The way that I think about it, okay, so as a lawyer, this is not my area of expertise. I'm not a mergers and acquisitions guy. And so I don't know the law down pat in this area, but here's what this sounds like to me. Okay, so there's a problem that you can have where your client has the wrong reason for what they want to do. Okay, so Elon Musk makes the offer. There's sort of an immediate response of, no, this is going to be essentially along the lines of disruptive to the company culture. And for that reason, there was a lot of pushback. And I think that the board was then subsequently counseled by their lawyers that defending the company culture is the wrong reason. Okay, so what is the wrong reason? So the wrong reason is when you are motivated to do something for a reason that makes perfect sense within your rationality. And the problem is that the law specifically says that that reason is not a appropriate reason to make this particular decision, right? And so lawyers encounter this all the time, where they have a client, they're like, darn right I did it, and here's why I did it, and I'm going to go tell the judge this is why I did it. And the lawyer hears that, and if it's the wrong reason, goes, okay, well, you're going to be looking to want to settle, because if you go tell that story, you're going to be liable. And the members of the board of directors are subject to a fiduciary duty to the shareholders, where they need to basically return as much money as they can to the shareholders. The shareholders have entrusted them with the investment. And you have two pieces to the puzzle here. You have the fiduciary duty, and then you have what's called the business judgment rule. Okay, and that business judgment rule says that courts will be very reluctant to second guess the board or the management's business judgment about what is the right way to return value to the shareholders, right? So if the board was able to cobble together some reason to say, no, taking this deal is not the best way to return money to the shareholders, to give profit to the shareholders, then courts would give that a lot of deference. But likely what the lawyers informed the board members of was, look, you have this fiduciary duty. Breach of that fiduciary duty is a personal liability. There's no way to shelter yourself from it. You could personal bankruptcy potentially, or whatever. It's your pocket that's under attack. The idea of warding him off to protect the company culture, that's the wrong reason. That's going to mean that you're losing the case. The right reason would be if you can come out and say, here is why the stock is undervalued right now, and we're going to get the stock up to a price that's higher than what Musk is offering. And I guess that upon hearing that that's the actual state of play from their lawyers, the board members sat back and thought, I guess we're going to be taking this offer.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And again, it was the offer that Musk brought forward was I think it was very generous. And what I was going to say is I think that there is the thing that I guess is what I believe is best about this, or at least the best possible outcome, is that he seems to really want to make this work. He wants to make it a success. I think that Twitter was on the decline, and that was actually showing in the stocks. It was actually on the decline for a number of years, and it wasn't really, most people who talk about Twitter, they don't talk about it as a fun place. It's actually quite antagonistic. And I was banned from Twitter years ago, although I did, file an appeal the other day. I don't expect that I'm going to hear back from anyone there for a while because the sale hasn't been finalized. So Musk is not he's not officially in charge yet. But I think that he really does want to make it a successful platform. And it might even just be for some, egotistic reason, like, oh, I can turn anything around. I'm going to turn this around. But I don't really think that that's a problem. I hope he does. He's actually been making quite hilarious tweets about buying other companies. I don't know if you've seen them. I mean, they're not true, obviously, but he's joking. But he said, for example, next, I'm going to buy Coca-Cola to put the cocaine back in. I just think it's so, that he treats it, so in such a jovial, way. And, but he also makes some really great points. Like, I'm not really a tech guy, but he said something about how, Twitter DMs should have end-to-end encryption like Signal, so no one can spy on or hack your messages. I don't know much about what he's discussing there, but it sounds like he really does want to make it better. He said for Twitter to deserve public trust, it must be politically neutral, which effectively means upsetting the far right and the far left equally. So, I think that he legitimately wants to make the platform viable. Currently, it is on the Apple Store. It's in second place in terms of the top charts. So
he's put in $40+ billion of his own money here, right?
Right.
So he wants this to be successful. He's not trying to burn that money, right? His vision is, okay, I'm now going to have control over a very famous brand that already has a huge network of users, and now I can add innovative features to it. I can do things that can sort of change people's conception about what Twitter is. Maybe Twitter will do much more for people in the future than what it has in the past. I mean, he is, no question, he's going to be trying to make this a great service that people love, because that's how he's going to make value off his $40 billion.
Exactly.
Now, it is interesting in terms of thinking about the landscape. So we've got now Elon Musk is, assuming this goes through, is going to own Twitter. And we have Facebook that, although it's publicly held, Facebook has this very unusual stock ownership provision, okay, where when it was going public, Zuckerberg was extremely concerned about, he wanted to let other people participate in the profits of Facebook, but he did not want to give up managerial control. And so, I don't remember the details, but I was following this when it did go public. And so companies are able to divide out into different classes of stock. So for example, common stock, you can vote towards putting people on the board. Preferred stock is you can't. You don't get a vote. You get a share in the profits interest, and it's more loan-like as a mechanism. Mm-hmm. Well, Facebook created special classes of stock that have just way excess voting rights. Okay.
Oh, I see.
And they don't have the profit rights, but they have all this voting rights, and those are held mostly by Zuckerberg. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Facebook has a structure that is going to retain control, managerial control in Zuckerberg, and that was that was a key part of how the thing went public. So from the anyone who's ever bought a share of Facebook stock has been buying it presumably cognizant of this limitation. Okay, so it's going to be Musk owning Twitter as a private company and Zuckerberg with a locked on control of Facebook. And so Zuckerberg has a position on free speech let's see, a position that makes the left mad on free speech. Okay, he's more permissive than the left would like, but he has been in a position of feeling so much heat, feeling so pressured with respect to content moderation, and it's not particularly his issue, and so he's not been so steadfastly standing alone. Okay, yeah, he hasn't been standing alone on that topic. But now that Musk is on the scene and is very clear about that this is his major issue, it'll be interesting to see how Zuckerberg then takes that as, okay, he's lifted the heat on me. Musk has actually asked for the heat on himself, lifted the heat on me. And so now we would be in a situation where Facebook and Twitter would both be drifting in this direction of less moderation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I use Facebook quite a bit. I know that it's sort of like, the least popular social media site for young people, let's say. They're mostly on TikTok, for example. But there is still a lot of content moderation that goes on Facebook. There's fact checkers and things like that. But I think that, just like you said, despite the fact that Mark Zuckerberg isn't exactly a champion of free speech, he is more, let's say, interested in other things than controlling speech on Facebook. He has the metaverse that he's pushing really hard. And I remember hearing about this years ago. And I don't know it, because I think what he's trying to do is figure out another way to make Facebook as sort of popular and viable as TikTok or, Twitter, I guess. I mean, Twitter was on its way out. It might make a comeback now. I think it will. I think that Musk is going to do what he can for that. But it's really interesting that Zuckerberg wants to essentially innovate Facebook and make it into this virtual, hyper real world that people can enter.
So we have a story coming up in just a few minutes about the metaverse and Zuckerberg's efforts to try and redirect Facebook, what is now Meta, along those lines. But just sticking with the question of what would it mean? So for Musk to be taking over Twitter, so this portends a real shift in the way that people will look at misinformation or content moderation online in the coming years, I think. I mean, it is challenging. I mean, misinformation, false information that's being disseminated on these platforms, there really isn't a great answer for that. And anyone that pretends there's a great answer is, I think, deluding themselves and maybe falling into a trap of thinking, it's not that big a deal if the people that I don't like get silenced. Even because there's going to be inevitably spread where it is not just the false information that is being curtailed, but it is the sort of unpopular or not taboo in some way information. So I'm running out here. I'm just very fascinated to see what's going to happen with this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure, but I think that the kind of there is a hold that our media, Twitter, and other social media sites have over almost everything that has a narrative attached to it. And I would like to see that opened up so that people can at least, debate the issues. And that's what I think is so I'm hopeful of when it comes to Twitter, is that if there are important stories, because I think a lot of people use Twitter to just make jokes or share memes or something like that. But if you're talking about things that matter, I think that it should be hashed out. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of noise, and that is, it is what it is, right? But what I'm hoping is that people will learn ways to use their rationality to cut through the noise and find, like the best and strongest arguments, and then look at those and see which ones hold the most, or hold water the best, or whatever. And maybe sometimes you don't have to make a decision on anything right away. You can just say, like, I'm gonna wait until I learn more. That was my position, for example, on the Ukraine-Russia thing. When that started, we were told this is how you're supposed to feel. And I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But I'm also not necessarily simply going to take the opposite position because I'm being presented with this position. So instead, I'm going to basically distance myself from it, wait and see what the truth bubbles to the surface. And even then, like, I don't have to make a decision on this, because ultimately it doesn't really affect my life directly. I mean, I hope that, we minimize the potential harm, but it's just not my place. So I think that there is a potential for that kind of exploitation, which usually involves emotional thinking, to get people, on this or that side of something. And I think that what there needs to be is a more rational discussion, and more, just healthy disagreement and stuff. And maybe again, I'm not on Twitter. I've been suspended. I don't even know if Twitter is necessarily, like, unless Elon makes some tremendously fundamental changes, I'm not really certain that Twitter is going to be like the end all be all of
No, people
social
need to get on
interaction.
Roil. They need to get on Roil.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a
That's
better
what I was-
system. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still Twitter, no matter what they do with the moderation, it's still a walled garden, right? It's still the $45 billion, or whatever the number exactly is not for the software. That's not worth hardly anything. It's for the network of users. It's for the fact that all these people have agreed to be in this walled garden that is just bringing so much value to the company, not that much value to them. And so Roil's model, break apart the walled gardens, be able to spread throughout the internet, be able to view throughout the internet, and be able to spread throughout the internet. That's the better approach. So the second thing that happened in the last couple of weeks that portends a change in expectations about what's going on in the upcoming years, to me, is my reading the tea leaves. He hasn't made an announcement, but it just seems clear to me that DeSantis is running for president against Trump. That there had been sort of an expectation that the 2024 Republican primary would, if Trump runs, that he would sort of clear it, and everyone else would recognize his popularity in the Republican Party and would make room. And the way that DeSantis is acting, that just doesn't seem like, that's not what's on his mind, in my opinion. He has established himself as a traditional Republican who is engaging in these culture war battles in the same way that Trump had been. And I think that Trump's rise, a lot of it had to do with frustration in the Republican Party, where the voters would see the culture war going on, would see their candidates failing to engage in it. And then Trump came along and said, yes, we are taking the fight culturally. And that proved very popular among Republican voters. DeSantis now has internalized that message and boy, is he doing the culture war hard. And he's doing it even in ways that are potentially unpopular in Florida. Open him up to challenge by in a Florida governor race or something like that. For example, when the Twitter poison pill news was breaking, DeSantis said, he held a press conference where he said, we as the Florida Pension Fund, we own shares of Twitter. And we would be very interested in suing the board of directors for the breach of fiduciary duty because we want the pension fund to do well, because we have these retirees, and we want the pension fund to do well, and we think that it could have made a lot of money if they had accepted the offer. And so he was basically saying he was going to direct the lawyers for the state to spend their time engaged in a lawsuit against the Twitter board.
But they're saying, like, oh, this is so bad. It's bad for democracy because Musk believes in free speech. And I'm just thinking to myself, are you kidding me? But that is what they believe. Their view is that they should be able to control the discourse. They should be able to control what you hear and think. They should be able to impose a narrative on our society. And Elon Musk represents a threat to that. And quite frankly, he represents a threat to their power. But all he's doing is wanting to liberate the platform so that people are able to converse and are able to really hold some of these people accountable for their lies. And so I think that that's a positive thing that he's trying to do. I hope the deal ends up going through. It seems like it's probably not. And so we're going to look at our options, because I think these are really significant issues. I mean, if you have to have a free society where we're governing ourselves, you really need to have people be able to stand up and speak the truth.
That's not a Florida issue. No. That is a culture war issue. That would open him up very directly to somebody running against him in Florida saying he is not paying attention to the needs of the people of Florida. He's getting distracted. He's taking on these other matters. So he's shown that he is willing to take potentially a hit in Florida in order to keep himself and insert himself into the national conversation. And of course, this is a turning of the page for him, where previously he had been most remarkable for his deviating from the mainstream line on COVID, right? And saying, look, we need to keep our state open as much as possible, even during the pandemic. And he had taken a lot of heat for that. As a Florida resident, I'm quite grateful, for example, that my kids were able to be in school, and I know that they wouldn't have been in a lot of places. So that was his main issue, and I think that he could have ridden that to re-election. But
I think the other thing too is that, like, Florida's like a tourist town, right? So if you couldn't, I think it would have been really hurt by lockdowns financially or economically, because it's not like, say, Illinois, where it's just the middle of the country and it's all farmland, and, most of the economy comes from what people produce. I think that, maybe I'm wrong, but I would guess, I've never been to Florida, that there's a lot of travel and tourist, attractions like Universal Studios and Disney, and then there's the beaches and everything else, that if he closed those things down, they would be really hurt by it. Like financially, is my guess anyway. I mean, not that that's the only reason. I'm sure
it's true, but there's a lot of tourists in New York. There's a lot of tourists in California. Yeah, and it didn't stop them. It didn't stop them from wrecking the tourism industry, and also just wrecking so many small businesses in their states.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, then the other way that much bigger than this Twitter thing, that DeSantis has been engaged in the culture war, is that he sort of picked up the mantle of this law that other people had been promoting in Florida, this parental rights law, or the so-called Don't Say Gay law. And that passed. He staked out his claim on a side of the culture war, and that is a very complicated topic that I'm not delving fully into that law right now.
Okay.
There's so much to say about that law, but Disney, which is one of the biggest employers in the state, came out in opposition to the law and trying to use their sway to make DeSantis unpopular and make the law unpopular. And that led to really a big escalation by DeSantis, which was the removal of the special status of Disney World in Florida and their special Reedy Creek Improvement District, which is something that a term that nobody knew before, but now is very much in the conversation. So the Reedy Creek Improvement District is the governing jurisdiction and special taxing district for the land of Walt Disney World Resort. It includes about 40 square miles within the outer limits of Orange and Osceola counties in Florida. It acts with the same authority and responsibility as a county government. And then this month, in April 2022, so Reedy Creek has been around since 1967. But this month, April 22, the Florida legislature passed a law abolishing the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Some members of the Florida legislature, as well as political commentators, claim the action was retaliation stemming from Disney's opposition to the controversial Parental Rights and Education Act, commonly called the Don't Say Gay bill by its critics. The law, not the Don't Say Gay, not the removal of the Reedy Creek law, takes effect in June 2023, at which time the RCID would be dissolved. However, since the district has over $1 billion bond liabilities, it's possible that Florida may not be able to dissolve it so easily. Okay, and so that's getting into the fact that there's going to be legal challenges to this move. Now, okay, DeSantis running against Trump. What I would say about that is I've made my opinions about Trump really clear before. I loathe the idea that Trump would walk through the Republican primary and that he would be running for president again. I think that the faster the Republican Party can drop Trump, the better. Trump's value proposition was, I'm a scoundrel, but I'll fight the culture fight. And I don't want a scoundrel in the White House. And I think he did demonstrate his scoundrel character, especially after the 2020 election. DeSantis, on the other hand, is an excellent matchup. He's 30 years younger than Trump. He is all of the macho ways that Trump likes to put people down. DeSantis trumps Trump. Okay, he's younger. He's more virile. He's a really accomplished athlete. Or he was an outstanding baseball player as a kid. He was the captain of the Yale baseball team. DeSantis was. And then he went to Harvard Law School. And upon graduating from Harvard Law School, he didn't take some lucrative firm job, but he joined the JAG Corps and he served in Iraq. And then he joined the U.S. Attorney's Office. So he has the traditional pedigree of the guy who is showing great character and is going to be an American politician.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what that's worth in today's climate, but this is the kind of thing that voters in the past, and particularly Republican voters, have really liked. And it really takes the legs out from underneath the way that Trump likes to put people down. So I think that DeSantis is a very good matchup for Trump. And like I said, I would be very grateful if he helps us avoid the situation where Trump is in the presidential election in 2024. That said, he should not have passed this withdrawal, in my opinion, of the Reedy Creek Improvement Zone. Okay, this is a true challenge to free speech. Walt Disney Corporation has the right to take a position, and the government should not then come down on Walt Disney for whether they're taking a stance for or against a certain law. Republicans have been very strong in fighting for the ability of, as Mitt Romney once said, corporations are people, right? The ability of corporations to take stances on public issues. And corporations really can't if they're subject to government retribution in the form of, you know, whatever it might be, removal of contracts, removal of this special district. I think it will be difficult for the DeSantis administration to argue that the removal of the special district was anything other than a retaliation. I think that it is very likely that this is going to be thrown out by the courts as a violation of the First Amendment. I can understand the perspective of DeSantis, who is desirous of raising his national profile and just proving his culture war bona fides, and saying, look, we're going to take the fight all the way. And it is a failure of imagination when the way that you take the fight is a violation of your core principles. Okay, and the freedom of speech, the ability of whether it's a corporation or an individual to take a stance on a public law without retribution from the government, that should be a core principle. And I think in other situations it would be considered, he would view it as a core principle. Now, that said, the counter argument to that would be, well, yes, the government is beating up on a private corporation here for their speech. That's true. But Disney is in a position where they have the resources to get their rights vindicated. They will fight this in court, and if it is a First Amendment violation as deemed by the courts, then it'll be reversed. So that's the other side of the scale. Mm-hmm. But if you ask me, he shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I guess time will tell. I mean, if he loses to Disney, they will certainly use this against him. It may not affect his base, though, because I think that the people who like DeSantis are going to be willing to overlook this for the most part. I don't know, though. I guess we'll have to see. As far as like Trump and DeSantis, what I think is interesting about it is that Trump has been very complimentary to Ron DeSantis. And, he's a big fan of his. I mean, I think he's currently staying in Florida, or something. I might be wrong about that. I guess he's touring right now, technically. So I wonder, and I've asked myself this, like, would they actually run against each other? Or might they work something out that's like more like strategically sound? For example, I've watched a number of interviews with Trump where, of course, inevitably, every interviewer asks him, are you running in 2024? And he always, he doesn't say. He just says, we'll see. I think you're going to be pleased with what we do. And that's probably like, you have to say that stuff, probably. But I wonder if he isn't like, trying to decide. And, Ron DeSantis too. Obviously, DeSantis wants his voice to be in the public national conversation. And there's probably a number of other, let's say America First or populist candidates in other states that are trying to do the same thing. But there seems to be more opportunity with Ron DeSantis specifically, regarding like what happened with COVID, which I think is the first, most people heard his name. And then later with Disney and the bill, I don't suspect that Trump and DeSantis are going to try and become obstacles for each other. So I'm just making a guess. Okay. My guess would be that it's possible. What I'm expecting is that Trump runs in 2024, DeSantis runs in 2028. If that doesn't happen, then what will likely happen instead is DeSantis runs in 2024 and Trump gets out of the way, or he supports him in some other fashion. I've been watching some videos of rallies and that Trump's been doing. He's been going to various states, and and his primary reason for going to these states and doing these rallies is to get citizens of these states to look at candidates that he is endorsing. And what I'm noticing in terms of like, the patterns that are emerging from these candidates is that there is this frustration that Republicans have, Republican voters, I'm describe it that way, not necessarily Republican politicians, because that's a different can of worms. But Republican voters are frustrated with weakness in the Republican Party, like with rhinos and neocons and, these people that are claiming to have their best interests, but they don't, like the Mitt Romneys and the Lindsey Grahams and so on. And they want people who are actually going to fight for them. And so Trump is making all these endorsements of candidates that are local. And so what seems to be happening is there are a lot of people that want to affect change locally. And so they're looking at these recommendations and they're being very critical. Like even here in Virginia, we recently voted for Glenn Youngkin, who the reason why we voted was because of, this critical race theory being taught in schools and this incident in I think it's Loudoun County where, a trans woman teenager supposedly, sexually assaulted a girl in like a bathroom, and they were able to get in because of the bathroom things, right? And so Glenn Youngkin was running on the platform of changing that. And so people got on board, but I guess there is still a lot of other criticisms of him for other reasons. So you get like this one incident that like drives people, especially like mothers, to go out and vote because they're looking out for their children. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they like the candidate on other grounds. So I think that there is like what I'm noticing is culturally there's like more discernment and more people are being more critical of the Republican political establishment, and they're looking for answers. And I think that's why Ron DeSantis is such a kind of a towering figure on that side, because they want more men like that, right? And that's why I think he's making a big hullabaloo, because he wants he wants people to want people like him in their own state or their own local governments or whatever. And so there's a lot of advantage to that. I don't know about the what the consequences of this thing with Disney is going to be. I don't know if it's going to do harm or whatever. But I think that as someone who just sort of tries to get a feel for the general sentiment of people who eventually go out and vote, and I think that most people vote on that. They generally don't look deeply into the policies or administrative changes, but they just look at like how it makes them feel. Unfortunately, that's just the case.
Well, it's interesting that it seems like the culture war has like swallowed everything now in our discourse, and it is funny how there was a long time where there was sort of denial about the culture war. And, and people were like, "Oh, it's not really happening. It's just college campuses. It's just these few cases that are being highlighted." And the Republicans were like, "And so let's focus on tax cuts." And now the culture war is more out in the open. It's more sort of acknowledged by everybody. And the Republican voters, I think, are in a situation where they don't seem to know really what they want. They have an idea of trying to be fiscally responsible, but they haven't shown that that's a real priority for them recently. They, I think, are sort of feeling that things are changing too fast, and they feel like things that they hold dear are being unfairly attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want people who will sort of slow down the pace of change and not let them be attacked.
Yeah.
And maybe don't really know exactly what they want beyond that.
Yeah, I think they want to rein things in. I think it's really more like they know what they don't want than what they want. And they want to like push past that. Because, well, I believe that most of us are living under a paradigm created by the left through education, through our entertainment over many, many decades. And so people who think that they're on the right are probably not. I think that they're probably they're just not as far left as the left. And
so what do you mean by that, though? I mean, so let me give you an example.
Yeah, sure.
Temperamentally, people on the left might be more inclined to be open to new experiences and to engage in a lot of creative expression. So we would expect, as always has been, that the artists are going to be sort of more left-leaning. And of course, the artists are going to have some cultural influence more than people who aren't creating stuff that's going to be, absorbed by other people, of course, right? So in that sense, I can understand, okay, we are in a situation where the people who do creative work are disproportionately influential, and those people will tend to be on the left because it aligns with other parts of their temperament. But does that mean that we are living in a paradigm designed by the left? That it's designed by the left sounds like it's some
conspiracy. I'm not trying to say that, but I will say that I actually don't really agree that creative, artistic people are necessarily on the left. I think that that they would be by design. So because we associate leftism with open-mindedness. But I think that presumes then that being right-wing means you're less open-minded. And I wonder then, where does this, because it seems to me it's a negative connotation, right? So like if you're on the right, if I ask an average person, what are the qualities of a right-wing or conservative person? And they will list off these things, and they're all negative in their connotations, right? They're they're misogynist, they're racist, even if you go to extreme, right? Extreme conservative, right? They're misogynist, they're racist, they are backwards, they engage in religious thinking, they are closed-minded, they're nationalistic, which is, of course, presented as a negative thing. They're xenophobic, and so on. But then when I look at the way that the hard left behaves with people that disagree with them, they have all the same traits. They're just against a different group of people. So can the left be racist? Well, yeah, they are. They tend to be racist towards what they call whiteness. So then how is this quality of being bigoted? Why do we associate it with the right when the left displays it? Like, what is it? And then when I think about what is a trait that the right has that is absolutely unique to itself, and what is a trait that the left has that is absolutely unique to itself? And I don't mean like in the sense that, right-wing people are racist against blacks and left-wing people are racist against whites, because those are essentially the same. They're just directed at different people for different reasons. So it doesn't work as a unique quality. And so when I think about these descriptors that we use to describe the left, I think that they seem to be overly charitable, because we don't unless you've been around the left enough to see, that they are capable, or they have the potential for tremendous hate and anger and violence, which are things that we're not supposed to associate with them at all. Then it doesn't add up if that they have the same potential that anyone else does. So then why are we told this? And I don't think it comes from like artists, for example, colluding to put forward a narrative. I think it comes from our education system primarily. And I think that people who get educated, they learn things about history that are in small ways biased enough that I think it affects our perception of not just history, but of the present. So, we get told things about what people in the South are like. And of course, when we refer to people in the South, it's specifically referring to whites in the South. And what's weird is, as someone who grew up in Chicago, and I tend to pay attention to people's behavior, I notice that all of the traits, all of the qualities that people think of when they think of hillbillies, rednecks, and crackers in, Alabama or in other southern states that are usually associated with, racism and the Bible Belt and all of these commonly held kind of stereotypes, I see the same thing in inner city blacks, the exact same thing. Even the language is the same. And I'm like, well, but blacks, they vote primarily for the left, right? So I'm like, well, what makes this different from this? And so, I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to parse out. It's not that I think that we've all been living under a distortion, like that Christianity is, it's always hypocritical and it's bigoted and it's anti-gay and it's all these things, right? And I think that it's presented in an intentionally oversimplistic way, and of course, and I could just go back to this again, this religious thinking that we are fed probably like 24/7 about, say, Christianity. And I say this as a person who's not a Christian, but I try to be fair to Christians. It's weird because that same religious thinking exists in Antifa, in Black Lives Matter, in Marxism, right? In fact, there has been a series of really long essays done that demonstrates how, far left atheistic ideologies like Marxism are religion, and they have a very similar qualities. And so but we've never been told that. Like, I've never watched a movie that or a news broadcast or learned in school that that human beings we have a flaw that makes us want to make things religious, whether they are or not, because we have did you notice that when the BLM protests of 2020 after the death of George Floyd started, there was all of this religious symbolism that was put into graffiti paintings and people's behavior at protests when they were peaceful. They were washing the feet of blacks. They were doing all of this ritual, and they were also doing it mostly as atheists. So, but it was for a specific purpose. So it made me think, well, why do we have these stereotypes, these broad narratives about what it means to be Christian, what it means to be on the right, what it means to be conservative? And it just so happens that most of the negative behaviors are associated with them, and also that most of the same behaviors are seen in people who are not there. Like feminists are basically cultists. They have a religious belief about reality. But not only do we not see that, but we're not allowed to say it if we do see that.
Well, okay. So I think that the cultural narrative about Christianity, right, you can't understand that outside of the context of here in the United States, there's a long history of people chafing under restrictions that were imposed in the name of Christianity, right? Just to pick one, the LGBT movement, right? I mean, people suffered tremendously because of Christianity's closed-mindedness on these issues for a long, long time. And so, and in particular, the people that I was talking about before that are open to experience and more likely to be generating art and more likely to have this kind of greater cultural pull as a result. And so that colors the understanding of Christianity that we're sort of taught, right? Because people were hurt by it. And it in many ways, the Christianity that was really popular, the Great Awakening or mid 1800s or whatever that was, that would be very ill suited to how people should live today, right? We are on, so right now we're at the end, knock on wood, of the COVID pandemic, okay? And people are sort of, their heads are spinning from it. They're like, well, what is the world now?
Yeah, sure.
Well, our heads are spinning so much more than we even know, right? 150 years ago, we would have been living on farms, not many people, the cities were not nearly as populated as they are now, or the population was much more rural. We didn't have cars, we didn't have telephones, we didn't have TV, we didn't have, we were living just 150 years ago. People were living in ways that were not that different from how they were living thousands of years ago. 150 years ago, the knowledge that sort of people absorbed by osmosis about how the world works and like how the seasons go and how plants grow and all that was the same knowledge from thousands of years ago. Now we don't carry that knowledge, right? Our world has been so dramatically transformed. And of course, our culture is not going to catch up at the same speed. Right now, we are kind of like going through teething pains, trying to wake up into, all right, what does this new world mean? And certainly a lot of traditional stuff needs to be shed and new things need to be constructed, and we don't know what those are really going to be. And they are sort of postulated with a lot of naivete right now. But I can understand your point of view that we have been fed a lot of stuff from the left, and that's sort of the water that we swim in. But a lot of that also is just the result of so much has changed. And there's no rolling back the clock. And the question is just, what road are we on? How do we navigate it?
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't disagree. I think that it's just a matter of like, we should be aware that our culture is framed, and like it's sort of like, think of it like, and I try to use this analogy to help people get it, because I know that there's a strong response when you broaden the discussion of like that two, let's say, human relations across our belief systems and across our our life choices, like whether we live as LGBTQ people or heterosexual people or whatever. But if you look at it like, it's been said that we are living in Marcuse's world of repressive tolerance as we speak, which is an essay, and we can get into it another time. But I think there's truth to that, and I think that the best example I can give is the average person lives their life under a feminist frame of reality. And the feminist framework of reality is you don't have to be a self-described feminist to believe it. Because if I ask an average person, are you a feminist? They'll say no, right? A lot of people say no because they associate the term with something negative, like a bra burner or, a feminazi or something extreme, right?
But they still live under the paradigm that men are the problem and women are the priority.
Yes, right? Exactly. They still live under the paradigm that historically men have oppressed women. So it's not just a current paradigm that, men are the problem, women are the priority, but also a historical paradigm that all through history, right up until the 1960s, men just, misogyninated all over women and took away all their rights, and they never gave it to them, and that we are always one bill away from The Handmaid's Tale, right? Which, if you've ever read The Handmaid's Tale, such a reality could not exist, and it doesn't anywhere, not even under Muslim countries. Like they absolutely prioritize the safety of women in those countries. And so why do we believe this? Why do we accept this narrative without criticism, right? Well, part of it is we're not allowed to, but you can take the same framing, and I think it can be expanded out beyond the relationship between men and women. The only thing is that the relationship between men and women is such a powerful story. It's even in Christianity, honestly, that we can't possibly shake free of it, or at least it's very difficult. And I think that from that central story, all of the other ones sort of tumble out. And that's what I mean when I say it's very difficult for people to parse out the actual reality they live in. I would guess that people who would be considered not even like conservative in like a partisan way, but people who were sort of normies of like 200 years ago are probably far, far and away more conservative than people today in ways that we couldn't even begin to fathom just because of how different life was. But there was probably also more liberalism in those same people than we could, probably fathom as well. And I think it's because we are, through public schools, through our media, through just the way that we talk about things, and the fact that as generations go on and on and on, women have more control over the conversation. I think that we are in a pretty severely distorted version of reality, and it's very difficult for people to talk about outside of that frame simply because so many of us are in the frame, so we can't imagine a world outside of that, if that makes sense.
Well, so the way I think about it is that the traditional roles have been male disposability and female
priority,
limitation on freedom.
Yeah,
right?
Security.
Yeah, female security, but it's limiting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we are now entering a phase where it's not necessary to put those restrictions on female freedom because we have so much safety, we have help in raising kids, we can move past it,
Mm-hmm.
And we are not yet at the point of culturally being able to talk about moving past male disposability. And instead, what's going on is that all that tendency towards male disposability is being poured into this men are the problem narrative. And that it fits like a glove for most people. Basically everybody, when they first encounter it, it fits like a glove. They're like, yeah, I can go with this.
Yeah.
I find women more pleasant too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And as we are, developing, communicating, building some kind of culture online, we're now seeing more and more people that are questioning that, okay,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute. Do men just have to acquiesce to this idea that they're going to be disposable in this modern world?
Yep.
So our last story, talking about modern world, what's around the corner, let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. So we had talked about before that Zuckerberg, his main interest has not been the freedom of online speech. His main interest has been more, technical stuff. Although, who knows exactly what
goes
Zuckerberg
on
is
in
interested
Data's head. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And now that Elon Musk has entered the arena, Zuckerberg will likely be, in my projection, taking Elon Musk's lead a little bit on issues of speech. But Zuckerberg's fascination is now building the metaverse. Okay, I've got a little article about this from Business Insider. Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse obsession is driving some current and former Facebook employees nuts. It's the only thing Mark wants to talk about.
He's probably pretty invested in this. It looks expensive,
Yes. Okay, Facebook has renamed itself Meta. Last year, it lost $10 billion on its Reality Labs segment,
Ouch.
which handles metaverse projects. It intends to spend that much this year too, and possibly for many years to come. Zuckerberg has said the metaverse is a long-term project that won't be fully developed for a decade or more. And the way that they spin it in this is that people in the company are frustrated by Zuckerberg's obsession, and it's leading to disorganization, lack of clear understanding of the purpose and the vision for the company.
Do you think that he could drive Facebook into the ground with this? Like if it's a really risky prospect, right? Because if he makes this virtual world called the metaverse, and he's hoping to get all of his Facebook users, or at least a large chunk of them, into the metaverse, that's where the payoff would be, right? If you can get a lot of people in there, because then he can, I don't know, like maybe they'll have microtransactions, or he'll be able to use, advertisers could use it or whatever. But do you think that maybe it's one of these things where it's a little bit too ambitious for our current, technological limits?
That we could be watching the beginning of an epic implosion of a company
Yeah,
that is going to be talked about for generations
Yeah.
in corporate law classes, explaining why you do not put in place this kind of skewed voting rights, stock ownership, yeah, I think that's very possible.
Yeah.
So could Zuckerberg drive it into the ground? 100%. He's in control. He can't be dislodged from control. He has the protection of the business judgment rule, so that I don't think that there's any room to argue that he's not trying to do the next awesome thing that's going to make the other shareholders a lot of money. The courts will defer to his business judgment, and he could just drive that ship off the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
Now, I also think,
go ahead.
as a programmer, I also think, man, $10 billion a year of original research into software and hardware, that's a lot. There's going to be awesome innovations that come out of this. It's got to be fascinating to be a programmer. I'm sure that he's going to be able to hire the best, because you rarely get an opportunity to do something that's really blue sky, and it's not like, okay, here's the app, you have to have this as a deliverable in next month. And here they're like thinking about big topics, original, intellectual property. Great things are going to come out of this. I have no doubt that when you put that much money into this field, that yes, it's advanced, but there's so many areas that could use more exploration, that there's going to be really great inventions. Now, I also think he's kind of nuts with this. I mean, the problem is that virtual reality has no killer app so far.
Yep.
Okay, now, so what's a killer app? Okay, so the classic killer app was for electricity, and it was the incandescent bulb, right? So people had developed electricity. They're like, oh, check it out. We can generate electricity at our power stations. We can transmit it over some distance with these wires. Okay, well, what are you going to do with it? What's the application that's going to reach the end user? And the end user is going to get this and be like, okay, this is now going to be part of my life. This is not a curiosity that I'm going to get tired of. With electricity, they were like, electric light, this is the winner. This beats kerosene lamps.
Yeah.
We're never going back, right? It's the killer app. Now wire the whole world once the electric light bulb is invented. And there just isn't anything like that in virtual reality.
Exactly.
Virtual reality, everything is just a curiosity. I think, for example, that there's probably a lot of room for technological shortcuts to get a better graphical experience in virtual reality, better movement detection in virtual reality. A lot of room for that with our current programming power. Fine. So then you're now in a virtual reality game where things look just a little bit more realistic. Does that move it from being just a curiosity to a killer app?
No.
I've
always been critical.
And I don't even know what a killer app would be for virtual reality.
Yeah.
I could see maybe an augmented reality killer app where maybe you're wearing glasses that's going to then display something. I could see that getting to a point where people are like, yes, this is something I'm going to use every day now.
Perhaps, but I'm with you on this. I've always been skeptical of VR, and someone bought me a virtual reality headset, like an Oculus, and they sent it to my house, and they were like, I want you to try it because I think this is the future, and I did, and I downloaded a couple of demos. And but it's sitting here collecting dust. I don't use it anymore. I mean, I use it a little bit at first because it was kind of, there is that initial like, whoa, I'm experiencing vertigo because I'm standing on top of a skyscraper looking down on the city or something. But it's I knew from the beginning, like, this isn't even going to blow open gaming as like the sub, sort of like it's just going to remain like a sub hobby of that. So how could it even go beyond that into, say,
that's a
social
great point.
media, right?
That's a great point, right? Until the gamers are all over it and are using it really on a routine basis, how could you expect that anyone else is going to?
Exactly. And also, it does have, you have to consider that it has a pretty high financial bar for entry. I mean, I know the headsets are getting cheaper all the time. But if you're like a working class person that's on Facebook, I see no reason why you would spend $200 on a headset just so that you can look at Facebook in, I guess, in a 3D space, or Meta if it's not anything like Facebook. But I imagine there is a desire to integrate Facebook in a VR way, but I don't see how that is going to be enough to get people to drop everything and get VR headsets. Plus, you need like a decent machine to run it on, they're also very expensive. You're going to need like a decent phone, because I know that there are some phones that can do it, but it's all like, there's just too much that you would need to get an experience that I don't think is actually going to be that much of a leap forward for your returns. It costs money. And again, I think that people are very wary of virtual reality. Like, they're afraid of it. People are suspicious. I'll put it that way. Or, about like the amount of, I guess, about how addictive the experience could be. I don't think it is personally, but maybe I've watched technology develop over many years. So yeah, I mean, and also like even Facebook itself is not like as big of a platform as it used to be. It's been, like I said, I notice a lot of younger people, they don't use it. And that includes not just the Zoomers, but the millennials as well. They're mostly on Twitter and TikTok, and Facebook's just like for old people to reconnect with their family members.
The idea of an immersive virtual reality world, it makes me think about something I heard about vision research. And this factoid, it's something like this. It's something like, so how big is your field of vision? Okay, so you can see a good set of angles around.
Yeah.
But in almost all of it, the truth is that you just kind of have an awareness that it's there. You're getting a very blurry image, and the part that you can focus on to where you could actually read and what you're really attending to is super small. And the fact, now this is factoid, it might be wrong like this, but it's like if you put your arm straight ahead, it's like the size of your thumb. Okay, that's what you can really pay attention to. And so a small screen can do it. You don't need the immersive experience. Maybe that's not really,
it's not adding that much
the way the brain's wired. Maybe the brain's wired just for close attention to a small spot.
Yeah.
And as much as I am thinking, man, it's got to be cool for these programmers that are able to do blue sky research, huge budget, major company. You remember how much buzz there was 5 years ago about self-driving cars from Google?
I remember. They use Google Maps.
And now that buzz has kind of fallen off.
Yeah.
What's going on now is as though right at the beginning of that buzz, Google had renamed itself like AI cars. We are AI cars now. We don't have a car yet. We have a lab that's doing a lot of research, and we're just optimistic about it. And Zuckerberg, I would respect it more if it was just, these are the skunk works in Facebook, and they're spending $10 billion a year and doing hotshot research in there, and most of it's focused towards virtual reality, and they're off to find the virtual reality killer app. But the fact that he was like, we're going all in, we're making this identity now, where this is going to be our identity, even though we have no product, and there isn't even on the horizon a vision for AI that people are actually going to want to use every day.
No, because like you said about the light bulb, the reason why the light bulb sold electricity was because it was serving a purpose that everyone saw value in. Everyone, like they were by default, like, oh, well, now it's not going to, this is better than the lights I have. I'm going to go with this. It's it meets the basics of needs for people, and I think that needs are also like a driving factor. VR is not anything anyone needs. So if we're like, heading into. And of course, there's a lot of talk about how there's going to be, and this is another reason why I think Zuckerberg's timing is terrible. But there's a lot of people that are really worried about potential food shortages, inflation, and all these other like financial problems, economic problems, supply problems. They're not going to be saying, well, I want to get a VR headset. They're going to be like, I need to stock up on food and supplies and important things. That's what they're going to be concerned with. I'm worried about gas prices. I'm worried about, these like other, what you would call, I guess, kitchen table issues. And so how can you sell something that is at best, a technical marvel that offers, a degree of like a diversion that is really attractive in exchange when people are worried about much more important things. Like if there was some, like, I don't know, some way to, if you had some new gizmo that made it easier for people to do something that is like, that serves like a function in their life, I think that they would be more likely to respond to that. I don't see how, despite everything, I do not see how VR is ever going to blow up to the degree that you could like build your company around it. I don't see that. Even in the gaming industry, I think that it's a secondary thing. And there's a number of reasons for that, because its limitations, it's got limitations built into it that people don't want to, they don't respond to. So the only thing that might have some growth is if it was in a social space, but there already exists an app for that. It's called VR Chat, and people go into this VR social world. They can just talk to each other, listen to music, dance, etc. And even then, it's not huge, right? So I don't know, man. I think Mark Zuckerberg is making a mistake. I think he's gonna feel this bad, and it reminds me of a lot of other projects that people have tried where they have like done something that is just their reach, or I'm sorry, their grasp outstretches their reach. Is that the way you put it? Where it's like too ambitious for now, and it just doesn't work, right? It just falls apart, and they lose millions, if not billions of dollars. So, and personally, there's a lot of people who are very, very suspicious, more like conservative types that are very suspicious of Zuckerberg and all these other, what they describe as oligarch billionaires that want to create like a hyper reality that people live in, and they don't want anything to do with it. Like they're very, very wary. I think a little bit unreasonably so, because, at the end of the day, you could just choose not to go on Meta. I don't think that Zuckerberg can force anyone yet, and if you think that he's going to, then get off of Facebook and just call it a day, go on Roil. So I do think there is like a lot of distrust with what Zuckerberg is doing. I don't think it only comes from those corners of the internet, but I do think that that's a big thing. Plus, again, I don't see how he could possibly sell what he's trying to make to people. It's just, there's just too many factors that don't add up, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I hope that the next few weeks prove to be very eventful as well, and we'll be back in two to talk about what's happened.
All right. Sounds good. I look forward to it.
All right, great. Good talking with you. Thanks for watching. You can download the Roil app at your app store by searching for Roil Mobile or Roil Technology, or you can sign up at roil.com. We'll see you there.